Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of The Studio Life. I am Mark. I'm here in the studio, which is where basically we live. We live here, we die here, we wake up here, we fall asleep here. We have our own restroom, kitchen. I mean, there really is no need to leave because it is, in fact, the studio life. Um, these days have been all consuming, and we've got some new gear and we're playing with some stuff, and I thought it would be fun to hop on another edition and talk to you a little bit about a couple of the things that we work on. We work on PTZ cameras these days. We have a couple of super duper favorites. Our new cameras are the Canon N300 and N500 series. We don't have the N700. By the way, Canon, if you'd like to send us an N700, we'd love to play with it. We also have a Canon controller, and we have a Scarhoy controller. And so today we're going to have the chance to walk through some of the features of the cameras, and we'll talk a little bit about the controllers. And in other editions, we will talk about the controllers and really get into these things, compare and contrast pros and cons, the whole thing. Now, here's what's sort of interesting about today is we are running all of the cameras that we have through NDI. So normally we like to use SDI when we can. SDI is a beautiful signal. It is, it's clean, it's powerful. It doesn't rely on anything else. You have a device and you have a device, a capture card, a recorder, whatever you have, and that signal always works. We have been working quite a bit with NDI lately. NDI is the internet, it's a network protocol. And what it does is it takes all of the cameras and it places them onto essentially the network where anybody can access those. We also, in this particular case, are moving those signals via the network onto vMix. And where we have vMix, we have the ability to do pretty much anything. We can cut between cameras, we can add titles and things like that. Now, NDI is notorious for having a little bit of latency. We've had very little latency on these particular cameras of late, but the latency on NDI is hard to predict with absolute certainty. It's impossible to predict with absolute certainty. And so we have decided, in order to maintain perfect audio sync for this particular show, to utilize a feature that these Canon N500s have that really I have not seen on other PTZ cameras. Now, please bear in mind, I am not an expert on PTZ cameras. I'm only an expert on the PTZ cameras that we own. And these particular cameras have XLR inputs, including the ability to have phantom power. Now, we're not using phantom power today. We're using a simple, simple line input off a lavalier. I've got my lavalier. It goes to a lavalier receiver and plugs directly into the camera. But the great advantage to that is that the picture and the audio come in together. So there is no latency whatsoever when it comes to audio versus video sync. So that's really cool. That's a great feature of these particular cameras. Now, we use these Canon N500s for one primary reason. The sensor matches our C300s. And so for our ability to have a camera that is completely remote controlled and yet have professional, extraordinarily sharp quality, these cameras have been an excellent choice. It matches perfectly with our Canon infrastructure. We're very proud of that. Now, I will take a minute and talk to you a little bit about the N300. That's the baby brother to the N500, and it has a smaller sensor. It has some decreased number of features. Like if you were to go into the menu, the interface, you'll notice there are not as many features on the N300 when it comes to being able to dial in your settings. Still an amazing number of features. But I do want to have a warning. Maybe we should pop a warning thing up here to let you know, as much as we'd like to think its primary disadvantage versus the Canon N500 is its inability to capture as much light, which is very, very true. I will tell you, this has been a rather dramatic difference for us. We have not seen the ability to match these two cameras perfectly. The Canon color science may be there, but the same degree of sharpness, the same degree of contrast, the same degree of everything has not matched for us. So to us, the N300 is not, we have two N500s. We have one N300, and to us, that is not a 3-camera setup. That is a 2-camera setup with one auxiliary camera, which has a ton of features, but is not something that we would really use and recommend when it comes to that extraordinarily high quality broadcast that our Canon N500s can do, or the Canon N300 Mark IIs can do. Obviously, if you have better cameras than that, fantastic. But our N300 has been a bit of a disappointment in that sense. I will tell you also the low level noise that we capture off the N300 has been dramatically increased. It is not something that's subtle. When we try to match these cameras, we find that the N300 simply is very noisy when we get into low light, situations. So we love Canon. We are not sponsored by Canon. We want to be very respectful of the amazing technology in that camera. But I have to be honest, the N500 is a broadcast quality solution. The N300 is sort of an ancillary type of a solution. For instance, we may hang it from a ceiling or something like that where we don't need perfect match. Now, let's take a little bit of time and talk about the interface. So if we were looking at the interface on that camera, and let me try to bring it up here. And here we are in the browser. Now, this browser is very well designed. It's far better than any of the other PTZ cameras I've used. Now, the N300 browser is similar. You could obviously detect the different features that are common for one camera versus another. But here's the Canon N500 browser. You could see that there's a manual mode, an automatic mode, and a full automatic mode here on the left side of the exposure tab. And you have the ability to have auto iris and auto gain. If you were to go into auto gain, there's your auto gain, which means essentially that this particular interface is really not purely manual. It also has the ability to have aperture priority or shutter priority or ISO or gain priority. In addition, one thing that I truly like is this AE shift. Inside the AE shift gives you a couple stops of light up or down, and that it just functions beautifully. So if your auto is not perfect, give it a little shift here and there, and you're good to go. Let's switch out of the two autos. That gives me a full manual, and that gives us the opportunity to take a look at the ND filter. The ND filter is an actual filter. You could see it come across. There's your 1/16th and 1/64th. So we're going from near black all the way to full off. That obviously gets you a little bit more aperture and width, a little bit more softness, maybe some cinematic qualities, all while being able to control some of the bright light. As we move on to white balance, like any normal camera, you've got your autos and you've got your daylight and tungsten, which are standard. You can set your A and B or go full manual. It is good. It's fast. There's your low, there's your high, and coming back to auto just kind of snaps right back into place. Works pretty well. Here you have your matrices and your ability to control your tint. And so it works quite well. This is a good interface here for white balance. Under image quality, one of the notable things here is Canon log. You can get to Canon log 3. And as soon as you do that, it snaps right to Canon log 3 NBT 709 or 2020, which allows you to record this side by side some of your other cameras. And no complaints there. We'll use that when we're recording. Under image quality, here is where you'll find your black pedestal and some sharpness controls, noise reduction. In your focus mode, you have the ability to control focus, touch focus, or a focus guide. And so, for instance, let's move this camera around, widen it. This interface is available in every one of your screens. And let's come over to this particular unit right here. And so if we were in your exposure mode, it'll snap right to it. But if you're in focus, your touch autofocus will immediately get you some focus lock. You have a focus guide over here, which, as you can tell, has that beautiful square with the two arrows. And so as you shift that out of focus, you'll find that those arrows will separate, and and better focuses as you bring it together. So a better example obviously would be if I were to switch this camera far off on the side. So let's go ahead and do that. And now we're going to focus out here into the distance. And you can see as those triangles come together, you're in focus. Or, of course, touch focus. Now, the great thing about that is you have some control, and so you can pick the look, the desire you could pick the look that you desire. I like it. It works. PTZ, IS. Here is a pretty cool feature, your zoom controls. So at maximum zoom on here, and let's slide this thing over a little bit. And there's your TV over there. And so let's come back here to focus. There's the touch. So we have we're in on that TV. Now your digital zoom kicks in. You can do 300 times. I don't know what 300 times really means. 300 times is a big number. But notice over here, you've got all this extra zoom available at your discretion, at your control, and you can come in on that 300 times. At some point, it'll start to fall apart. But I find that there's a portion of this here that's usable by my standards. On the other hand, uh, you know, you might have a particular need where you need to get in a little bit tighter. So let's get that digital zoom off and switch over to the digital teleconverter. And here you'll have 1 time, 1.5 times, 3 times, and 6 times. 1.5 times just sort of snaps right into place. There's 6 or 3, excuse me, and 6. Again, of course, it'll start to fall apart here, but I find that 1.5 is still a number that feels about right. This is also your control for the image stabilizer, and other things here and there. Under your presets, super cool. Well, let's get out of this thing here. Let's back this thing off. So on a preset, here's a preset number 1. If I wanted to add this look, I can. If I want to come up with another look over here, I can. There's a oops. Let's pick this one up. Preset 2, add. Here we go. We have a 1 and a 2. Let's make this a 3. Add. Quick. It's beautiful. Here's what I like the most about it. The browser itself has this time speed mode right here. So if I wanted to go to preset number 1, I could just simply click view, and we're going to get in on that action. On the other hand, if I want a beautiful slow move, I can pick, let's say, 48 seconds and now make this move, and it is butter smooth. Butter smooth. This is something that manual operators have a tough time with. As a matter of fact, I would say it's a nearly impossible move if you're combining more than one, axis at one time over the course of something long. I can make a number of cuts. I can do all kinds of things while this is happening, and yeah, it just works great. Really proud of that. Under system, this is where you'll pick your resolution. Here's the audio mode. This is where you get to set whatever you'd like. You've got line mic and 48 volts in. I will tell you, I'm not a huge fan. Up here at this 75 number, I'm getting a lot of noise off that preamp. So this is not my favorite way to bring audio in. It's a great way if you're in sync, or a great way to stay in sync because these are NDI cameras. But at the same time, you want to respect the fact that this is not a a a high-end mixing board with the best preamps available. This is a little bit on the tough side. Use it when you need it. Try to keep that gain low, and you'll be okay. Under communication is where you're going to find your IP address. You can go to auto DHCP. This works okay if you're working with some controllers, including the Canon controller that has an auto discovery mode. On the other hand, if you're using a controller such as the Scarhoy, you're not going to get something that captures that DHCP. You are going to want to set this up as a manual capture. One of the great things about this unit is that even if you're in the wrong gateway, the Canon search app will find this particular camera and let you set the new gateway. I'll show that to you here momentarily. That's about all I needed to show you from this particular system. But I did want to bring up that, oh, here is the camera search tool, as a matter of fact. And you'll notice there's an IP6 address, IPv6 address. If no IPv4 address is found, meaning there's no camera on your gateway, you can still open up the browser with the IPv6 address. Now, it, by the way, sounds like I know what I'm talking about. I really don't know what I'm talking about, to be perfectly honest. IPv4, IPv6. Here's what matters, though. If the camera is on the wrong gateway, you can still open it up. You can still get to system. You can still get to communication, and you can still change this address. That happens when we're on the road and we may plug into a different router, or we may go to one of our routers that is completely off the grid where we set up a brand new IP address or a gateway, and we can still find the camera, which is really super duper cool. Now let's switch over to one more important feature, which is the Canon Camera Control application. We love this because unlike the browser, which shows only one camera at a time, this shows up to, I guess, 9. I like this particular one that shows 6 because it has a big window. And if I want to see this camera in the window, I just drag it over. I can do a lot of different things here in order to be able to work my angles. If you need to find the camera, you go to the hamburger menu under camera management, and once again, you'll find them. It's really cool. It'll search. It won't search cameras off the gateway, but it will search anything that's on your network. You have a bunch of other things in here that is worth checking out, but in particular, look at operational settings. That's a complicated word for shortcuts. You do get to control these cameras directly from your numpad. So I would learn some of these, and you might find them pretty useful. Lastly, you've got a beautiful preset and trace menu. So you can do all of the presets here, and yeah, it's great. It works just fine, as you can see. Nice, slow, and buttery. Now, I will tell you, don't pay much attention to the jerkiness on this screen. This is not a 30 or 60-second or frame per second frame rate. Um, it is what it is. It shows you what you're looking at. Now, in order to make any controls from this window, you should tell it what it's doing. So maybe you're going to center and then turn on the ability to center this. Let's work off of this one here. Centering, I want to center on the exit sign, and there you go. If I want to focus on the exit sign, I can switch to focus mode, and that's one shot focus over here. Okay? Pretty cool, pretty fast. If you want to control the camera, make sure you turn it on. And now we're moving. Now we're moving. On the right side, this is your autofocus or one-shot menu. You got focus controls. Here's your speed control. But again, your numpad will work. So learn the numpad commands, and you'll find that you have some advantage here. A here is zooming in, Z zooming out, and then my nums are telling me where I'm going. Close this up. You've got your preset menu. Not as many features here. You can't save them, but if you want to save a preset, just come over, drop this menu on the left side down, the hamburger menu, select preset, and you can do whatever you'd like to do. If you want more details on any one thing, come to the right. There's a lot of stuff over here. Now, this particular menu, I'm not hugely fond of. I like the idea of keeping it clean. But I do like to keep more things on my menu at once, and so this starts to feel a little clunky. Here is turn off the exposure or turn off the presets. Here's your exposure tab. If you want more details, well, you know, I guess not there. White balance. This is one you're going to get a lot of details out of. There's your basic, as much control. Go to manual mode. Now go to white balance. And now you're going to see all kinds of new stuff. Okay. Here's your trace menu. The first time you hit the button sets up the trace. The second one executes it. This is about a 30-second trace that we did. And a trace, if you've never done one, is something where, let's say you start recording, select your preset and start recording. Now I'm using the number pad in order to get where I'm going. I'm just going to go to the left. I'm going to go up. I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to go down, holding down some numpads. Then I'm going to hit stop recording. Now, to prepare that trace and play it back, just hit prepare trace. It'll bring you back where you started and execute. This is a 28-second trace, as you can see. And here we go. So now it just kind of runs through what it did before. Left, up, right, that kind of thing. Okay. While that's happening, let's go back to this particular camera. Notice anything you do, you want to turn on the activity for that camera. Make it active. If you want to center, hit center. If you want to hit focus, hit focus. Or, of course, you could turn all of that off. So we've got two great cameras here with the N500s. We have our N300, which we use for ancillary purposes, and we're very happy. So that my general review of this camera is it's extraordinary. It's an amazing amazing piece of equipment. One of the things I do not like about this camera is there are a couple of things that are handicapped from the N500 to the N700. One of which is the ability to motion track. Now you can motion track your focus, but you cannot motion track the camera itself. Now, it's a good upgrade, and not only can Canon do this, Canon has done this. Now, they charge a chunk of change for it. They charge $1,200 for their software, for the firmware to allow that camera to perform that function. It's not as much as a 700 is. So, you know, you'd save money if you stayed with the N500 and just bought that. But man, that's a lot of cash for tracking. We're thinking about it. We have not done it. It's got some nice features we may want. There's no chance we're doing that for all of our cameras. It just hurts. I feel like you know, I feel like that's a bit of a smack for that feature. So I'm saddened a little bit on that. But you know, it is what it is. They're in the business to make money, and they're going to make a lot of money from that, I hope, and I hope it's worth it for them. It's tough for me to think it's worth it for me. I mean, we could track from the joystick here, but you know, it's not as good. It's a lot of work. So yeah, I mean, we'll buy one of those licenses, but we're going to do it begrudgingly. So that's my review of the Canon N500, a little bit of a tour of the browser. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do not hesitate to reach out if you've got questions. I'd love to help answer questions. Obviously, we've got a lot of cameras here to use. You're welcome to partner up with us. We'd love to help you get your productions done. But in the meantime, you know, back to the studio life where we die from a lack of oxygen, clean oxygen from outside. You know, stuck in these buildings, no natural light. Yeah, that's it.